Hello, happy Friday, everybody. Here we are officially in spring, but today is not so warm. But anyhow, we are going to talk about a very exciting topic and also kind of mysterious, even to the brokers. Been in the industry, been in the industry for 15 years. That even the broker, we never really got into know much about the titles, everything about titles, the titles search, the title insurance. So, and really the buyer would ask, mostly that part will a lot of times will handled by the attorneys. However, today we're going to explore this mystery part with everybody. And so here I have Bill Hollar. He is the president of the Portrait Title Service Company. It's a full range service company for everything about the titles. So Bill is also a very good friend for many years. He's looking really dashing here with us today. So I'm going to have Bill to introduce his company himself. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Thanks very much for inviting me today. Again, my name is Bill Hollar. I'm the president and founder of Portrait Title Services. We're a title service provider. We're an agency, and what we do is provide title services to the professionals in the real estate industry, and ultimately that is the consumer who benefits from our services. So did you want to ask me some questions, or do you want me to lead into it?
Oh, I will ask you some questions.
Okay.
I didn't just have you here for tea and coffee.
No.
So we're going to really utilize Bill's, so many years experience. So this start from I'm going to start from very basic, because this part a lot of people really don't know, including us, the brokers. So the very basic 101, what is title?
I am so glad you asked that, Ann. I get asked this question all the time from professionals in the real estate industry, and it's a very strange that you would have professionals who are in the industry for so long who don't know everything about title insurance. Not that I know everything, but one of the mysteries around title insurance, and one of the reasons that mystery exists, is because it's a very complicated area. It's very detail oriented, and you need an expert's guidance to go through all the pitfalls of title. But to put it in a short phrase, the way I like to phrase it, is that title insurance is your guarantee behind your contract of sale. So if you think of it, if you go to Best Buy, you buy one of those great big widescreen TVs, it doesn't cost nearly as much as your home. A lot of people buy that extended policy, the insurance that says if something's wrong with my TV, I can come back and get a credit or get covered for that. Well, that's what we do. We provide title insurance, and that is your guarantee that when you sign the contract of sale, when you hand over all that money to the seller and the seller says, thank you very much, bye-bye, you own the property free and clear. And that's what title insurance does.
Great. You just took me to all the way to the end. We can say goodbye now.
No, there's so much more in between.
Exactly. So Bill just really quickly give us the really overall sense about what the title insurance is, but I'm going to really step by step. I'm going to step by step to crack it down, what it is, okay? So we know the title is when you purchase property, you have the title.
Yes.
The title is under Ann Chang's name, title is under, for example, JadeStone LLC, blah, 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 that's title. Then you will pass on to the next, purchaser when you sell.
Yes.
But we know that often we told the buyer, say, okay, we're waiting for the title search and the title insurance. When that's done, then usually the attorney was, close the closing, would schedule the closing, and the bank would schedule the closing as well. So what is the title search? The question is, what is title search, and what is involved in this due diligence? Like, what are you looking into?
That's a great question,
Yeah.
Ann. So a title search involves abstracting the property. Now you say, what is abstracting? We look at a property and we go back typically about 40 years. We look to say, who owns the property? How do they come into title?
Right.
Or how do they come to
Right.
own it? Did they get it from mom and dad? Did they buy it from another seller in a bona fide transaction? Or is it what we call it, a bona fide purchaser in line? What else do we look at? We look to see, hey, did they pay? Do they have a mortgage? Did they pay the mortgage? Is the mortgage delinquent? Did they forget to properly put out their recyclables? Do they have ECB violations? Did they fail to pay parking tickets? All these things. If you don't look at these things to make sure that they've been resolved before you go to the closing table, they can hang on the property after your ownership and after the person who actually committed the violations or the person who actually has the mortgage is gone. So that means the new owner takes title or is responsible for these liabilities. And that's these agencies and these companies, they protect themselves by saying, all right, fine, we can't force you to pay me today, but when you go to sell your house, you must pay me. Now, a good question that's always asked of me is, when should you perform a title search? And again, we want to make a big distinction between a title search and a title report. So when we perform a title search, it's dependent upon the situation. So what I tell my people that I advise, my clients, as attorneys, people who come to me with questions, I say, Bill, I want to run a title report, title search. Are we ready? So one of the things is you want to ask yourself, is it a distressed property? Is there a foreclosure in line? Is there problems in there? Do you have a squatter who has, maybe it's a rental property and you have a squatter? So anytime there's a potential clue that there is a problem with residential property, we always recommend to run the abstract search before you sign the contract of sale, because there just might be, and this is very valuable information for you real estate agents out there, there might be some basis of negotiation for a further price reduction. Not every time it happens, but on occasion we've seen some very nice reductions because they find out, hey, the abstract search popped up a problem you didn't tell us about. So that's a very useful tool before you sign the contract of sale.
So this stuff right here, because that is a part of usually in Manhattan real estate transaction, I really heard about the abstract search. So that's different from it's a part of the title search process that you recommend to be done prior to signing the contract.
Only in certain situations.
In certain situations.
Ordinarily,
distress.
We don't run a title search and provide a title report until a contract of sale is signed.
Correct. Right.
But this is why it's very important to have why we like to have a very close line of communication with the attorney, with the real estate agents, so that we can say, okay, what are we buying? What kind of deal are we walking into?
Right. So basically, you were saying that the abstract search, right, is part of the title search. Then title search could be very broad after signing a contract, but you just mentioned specific about the abstract search that, so today, maybe it doesn't really happen in Manhattan, but if today my buyer wants to purchase a townhouse that's it's been empty, vacant for a long time somewhere out, like far east, like they say somewhere in Brooklyn or some part of dangerous part of city or outside, suburb. That you would recommend the abstract search prior to signing the contract to make sure there's no, overextended situation. Is that what you meant?
Well, in a way, I would recommend the abstract search probably in that situation early. Now, I want to make another thing clear too. The abstract search and title search, title search is a very broad term. Okay. So there's two components of our searches. One is the abstract search where we abstract the history of the property. Right. And the other are the municipal searches where we look at, hey, do they have a valid certificate of occupancy? Right. And are there any violations on the housing and building report, the fire report, things like that? So those are two separate components that combine usually add up to the title search. I see. Okay. So in your title search, usually what are the sources that for your search, your due diligence? Like who or what department, who do you reach out to? In order to find out the answer and decision, since a lot of properties have changed hand and ownership, maybe 10, 20, 100 times. How do you track all the way, back to make sure it is a clear title for closing? Good. We send an abstractor to the county clerk's office to physically go through the files. Right. Usually it's a very easy electronic search. On rare occasions where we have to go back to a very ancient chain of history, we may actually be going through those gigantic books they have out there, which are larger than a ledger, filled with dust, to say, hey, how did they get this property? And searches can go back all the way back to when the Duke of York ceded this property over in a grant to whoever was in line. I see. So usually, how long this process would take?
they say this particular more identified in Manhattan, overall Manhattan, New York City, 5 boroughs. That how long is the title search process would take?
In Manhattan, the 5 boroughs, it's easy. Usually 3 to 5 days.
3 to 5 days.
As you move out to Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester, Nassau County can take up to 3 weeks because they're very far behind out there. And if you move upstate, we've had certain counties it takes a month to get a report out.
I see. So what affect the process of title search efficiency?
It's the clerk's office.
We
are dependent upon government employees and their schedules, their vacation schedules, accessibility to their files, and that's all predicated on that. And volume, frankly. When we're very busy, obviously it's going to take closer to 5 days in Manhattan. And when we're not as busy, it's going to take closer to 3 days.
I see. So for us, a real estate agent, when we try to time the closing from the contract signed to the closing, we normally give an estimate about how long each step would take, right? So title search and the title report is part of important process we have to take into consideration. So what would you recommend that this in Manhattan or in Brooklyn and Queens that without any rush, right? What would be the realistic timing we should allow to say, hey, this part will be title search report to be done?
Now this question deserves a 2-part answer.
Yeah.
The reason is one of the unusual circumstances in our tri-state area, but particularly in Manhattan, is all the new condo construction going on.
Right.
You'll have people signing a contract of sale to buy a building that's not yet, where they've just started breaking the ground.
Right.
That building may not be done for a year. So you have a contract of sale, yet the condo declaration isn't filed.
Right.
Whenever we come into those, I always tell the attorneys, let's wait until the condo declaration is filed. Because usually it's a very voluminous, long, tedious process and a lot of paperwork to go through. We don't want to have to go through that twice because there is an additional cost involved. So what I say is let's wait until we know the condo declaration is filed. Sometimes we'll even say let's wait until they have a temporary certificate of occupancy.
Right.
It all depends on the building, the developer, their history.
Right.
If we know it's a troubled developer that's had problems and complaints in buildings, we'll say let's wait a little bit longer to make sure. And that's very important too because if you see there's problems in the temporary certificate of occupancy,
TCO.
that gives the attorney some ammunition to say, hey, we want a little bit more concession, or we want to have, or maybe they'll want to have more items improved in the building. Maybe the inspection process.
So let me step back a little bit. For the regular resale, right? What is the general process it will take? Like you mentioned 3 to 5 days, but I think it's a bit efficient. Your company does, but normally what would take like a week, 2 weeks?
I would say budget 1 week. You could make it as tight as 1 week. If there are issues with the title, like things what we call clouds on the title, it may take us longer to clear them because we would have to go back to either previous owners, previous title companies to find out, hey, what happened. Or a frequent one is when there's an estate. Somebody passes away, it goes to the children or an uncle or a brother. We have to document and verify that process was done properly. Did it go through probate? Were the letters testamentary issued? So you have to make sure that person selling has the right to sell.
Right.
So that may take a little longer, but I always say, if it's an emergency, let us know ahead of time.
Right.
We'll get it done. If there's a problem, we tell you early so you can budget the time. It's very rare that there is a title issue that we can't clear well in advance of, let's say, mortgage approval or condo board approval, things like that.
Okay, so I'm going to also slow Bill down a little bit. I'm going to slow it down step by step because I know a lot of buyers, what they want to know, more curious about. So the title search, now we know the roughly process, as efficient as 3 to 5 business days. It can be take up 1 or 2 weeks, it depends on the circumstance. That we will measure it. So what type of, you mentioned briefly earlier, what type of circumstance that could possibly happen with the title? Can you just give us an idea, what scenario can happen? You mentioned about the liens and what other scenarios. So just so people know that why it's important to do a title search.
Absolutely. First of all, there are thousands of potential scenarios that would impact, literally. That's why you need a very experienced, detail-oriented professional to pour through the details. But let me give you an easy one that happened not so long ago. We had a property where we could not get in to get a water meter reading. And they had estimated readings for years. I forget how many years back, but for years. So we could not get in, and that was delayed at closing. And I would get calls and say, Bill, what's going on? I said, the water meter inspector can't get in for an actual reading.
Why would that meter reading will be also part of title search?
Because on the tax report, when you buy property, you're responsible for unpaid taxes,
yes,
and unpaid water fees, as well as utilities. Any utilities like that, you're responsible.
The
house is responsible, not
right.
the seller who's now left.
Right.
So if they can't collect from the seller, guess what? The new buyer owes the same amount that the seller owes.
So it's all part of your job to do it.
This is part of our job.
Wow.
But that one, we finally were able to. We had the seller's attorney put the thumb screws on the seller. They finally allowed the inspector to go in, and wound up they had thousands of dollars because they were, I don't know if they were filling up the neighbor's pool or whatever, but the water bill was incredible.
Yeah.
The water bill was incredible. It was almost unrealistic, but we then went to closing and said, you must pay this, and the seller wasn't happy.
So unpaid bill, what else?
Unpaid bills.
What other problem could happen?
Well, we've had a whole scenario of different problems. Let's give you one that was very interesting. Years ago, when the Iraqi conflict was going on and we were in the Gulf War, we had a seller, we had a buyer looking at a property. The seller was a woman, young woman, who inherited the property from mom and dad who passed away. And the property went to her and her brother. Her brother was serving in the Iraqi conflict.
Right.
Not somebody you can actually say, come to the closing table, obviously. So she produces a power of attorney.
Right.
That says, oh, my brother gave us authorization. Now, what people don't know is a power of attorney, when somebody's in a conflict, the commanding officer has the power of acknowledgement. So if there is truly a power of attorney, it's the commanding officer. They had to acknowledge by some guy who said, they visited me or whatever. We did not go for it. We said no. We advised our buyer, don't buy it. And it wound up later that the brother, we did some research on it, but the brother never gave permission to sell it. The sister was trying to sell it out from under the brother. So crazy things happen when you have large amounts of money, even within family.
So the second scenario means that the title, the person who claim they are sellers, are not necessarily real sellers.
They weren't authorized.
Right, and then they might use forgery documents. That's you also part of title. What else?
Let's see, let's go an easy one. Sometimes you'll have conflicts in municipalities, let's say. We had a property years ago where the two towns had a dispute on the border. There was a 4-foot dispute. One town said, I own it. The other town said, I own it. Our client was buying a property that the seller had purchased years ago, and in their title report, it said, we accept anything related to the boundary line dispute between these two municipalities. What does that mean? That means my guy was buying a property that was questionable whether or not he owned 4 feet of property. Running down the entire, I believe it was a 100-foot line. They negotiated a price reduction. He took it, but it's something you want to know and you want to be aware of because it could impair your value. Now, on the sad note on that one, the seller swore that the attorney never told him, that he wasn't aware. So it's very important when you get these documents to read them. The attorney says, I told him, I don't know what you're talking about, and a lot goes on at a closing table, so it can be confusing. Ann will tell you. Go ahead.
Bill giving us a lot of really interesting story, and so clearly you can see how much experience Bill has, and all this story that usually we just naturally assume that nothing's going to happen to title because we really have taken it for granted a lot of time, because a lot of buyers ask that, why do I need a title search, right? Why do I need a title report? Why do I need a title insurance? So, and then no more time, we just given the scenario that we don't really give out the real example, but here the Bill has been sharing interesting stories. So I know he has other story, but I want to move on to
a lot of stories. We could be here all day, but
I want to move on to the next question. So all these things are related to the resale, and very important question buyer asks when they buy in a new development. They say, but this is brand new construction. What can go wrong on the title? Why do I need to spend money on the title insurance, which we will have Bill to explain us later about the pricing, but why do buyer have to buy title or do a title search on the brand new construction where they are the first owner? So why?
Good question. And I was actually asked this about a year ago by an attorney.
Yeah.
And I said, look, you got a new construction project.
Exactly.
What's the odds it has mechanics liens? What's the odds there may be some issues with tax abatements, tax appeals?
Right.
You want to know all these things before you walk into it. What's the odds they had a sidewalk violation? You know how many construction projects in New York City get cited with sidewalk violations?
Right.
So when you go into these properties, the building is responsible, but you're owning, if it's a condo, a part of that building.
Right.
If that building has a large judgment against it, let's say they failed to provide security and there was an emergency service provided by New York City, those can be very, very expensive. And if the builder doesn't take care of these things, then all of a sudden the condo association is responsible. So that report that tells you the builder's doing a good job, they're clearing up, they've paid their plumbers, they've paid the contractors, you want to know that it's a clean project.
Right.
And most of the developers in New York City are reputable and there's not an issue, but we run into them. You'll be surprised how many times we see mechanics liens. They haven't paid, the project's been going on for 2 years and they haven't paid guys in the first year.
Right.
So you want to make sure that something compels them to clear these issues up, because the bottom line is if you buy that condo, the condo association can become responsible for all these unpaid liabilities of the developer.
That's true. I mean, when you purchase that from the big reputable developers, these things can be, more like guaranteed to be fine based on experience. But sometimes you purchase from the small, individual developer somewhere out somewhere. I think I would be more cautious. Instead of that, whether they follow each step, and that would be the title company's job to find out.
Absolutely.
I actually learning more about what I didn't know. I didn't know that I didn't know this much before now. I swear to God, because as I mentioned before, that title search and title report, title insurance usually just directly handled by the buyer attorney. As broker, we never really ask, who the title company is going to be. So for title report, I don't think I've ever been a broker, I've ever been provided with a title report, or the buyer was provided with title report to read. So usually that would be the buyer attorney's job, correct?
Absolutely.
Can the buyer and the buyer's broker to request a copy of title report?
Of course. And it's happening more frequently. In the old days, it used to be that, you went to the closing table and the buyer, the attorney would say, you got to pay for this, you got to pay for this, you got to pay for this, and it was done.
Right.
People are more informed now. With the internet, they look up, they say, what am I buying?
Exactly.
They get their estimate, and they see the word title, and they look it up, and they say, oh, there's a title report. And then all of a sudden they come back and say, where's my title report? And they're pushing the attorneys to say, I want to see my title report, I'm paying for it.
That's true.
So we're getting more and more of that. So our job in this new era is to manage that responsibility and obligation. We have an obligation, obviously, to the attorney to protect his client. We have an obligation to the client to attorney, and we have an obligation to respect that relationship too. And that's what I think we master at.
Right.
We want to make sure that we take care of all the parties on it, and we want to make sure we're treating the buyer, which is our ultimate consumer, who will come back to all of us one day, with respect, and to make sure we're covering their risks and that they're happy with the process. And that's what we strive for.
I mean, as we know that then move up, this the title, there can be anything that goes wrong with the title. So it's really important. Before, it's so like in a black box that you need to know who's doing it. The buyer doesn't ask, the attorney doesn't mention. It's just like it's in a buyer's attorney's hand. So today, now we know, and then maybe in the future we'll request a title report on behalf of the buyers to read it. Actually, just quickly insert one. The real case, which almost never happened, but it did happen. Just that last year we were closing on the one condo on Park Avenue, and the story goes that at the very, very last minute, when everybody's ready, the bank, the lender, said that they cannot close because they realized the building does not have TCO based on the title report. So everybody was shocked. So how is it possible the building doesn't have TCO? Because on the title report it says that the building TCO has expired and in the process of being renewed. So the lender refused to issue the loan, to clear the loan. But we were like scratching our head, not possible, because we saw other units were just all recently closed, like 2 or 3 months ago. And so it became a mystery. So the problem in the end happens to be that the title company making a human error, did not really pay attention, and there were lack of communication between the title company and the buyer attorney. The buyer attorney did not read the title report. So even though we made sure to do everything accordingly, in terms of each process step by step, however, the attorney and the title company, become there's a layer, lack of communication, didn't make effort, didn't do enough due diligence. So it became a big drama, but thank God we were able to resolve, but it just made me understand more that how important the title company and the quality of the title company, is. Not everybody can do the same quality job, right? So, and I know the bill is really like very, very accurate. Yeah. So that's confidence we have. So I'd
like to bring up a point to that,
yeah,
if I may. So
yeah.
One of the things that makes us a little different, we're more of a boutique shop. We're not a mass production or
yeah.
volume shop. I look at every title report that goes out our door.
Yeah.
And when I see an issue, I call the attorney and say, here, we've got a couple of items.
Right.
You want to focus on them. Because I understand my clients and my attorneys, they're very busy.
Right.
And I want them to be busy because that means there's
right.
more business for all of us.
Right.
So that's a good thing. So it's my job to pour over the title report, alert the parties down the line, particularly the buyer's side,
right.
hey, we've got some issues. And I say, is it okay with you if I call the seller's attorney and see what we can do about them?
Right.
So we start working on them almost 1 or 2 days after the title report goes out. We're focusing on what could be the potential issues that might delay a closing or impair the ability of a loan being approved.
Right. So, each transaction involves so many parties, so many wheels, like in a car. Every party need to be work together and rolling on, move on. And, but not everybody really can do, the same quality. In New York City, we have talent. In all kind of professions, everywhere, all kind of professions, you can find so many professionals. However, here in JadeStone, we really carefully screen each professional that we recommend to the buyer. And I think that's really important for the buyer to not just random pick. Sometimes you need to really based on the recommendation and word of mouth. So I'm going to move to, we just talked about the title search. And we're going to talk about the meaty part, title insurance. So a lot of buyers, they were confused about, I have a homeowner insurance and the building have master insurance. So why do I need to pay title insurance? The reason the buyer asks that, but most of the time buyers really feel like they don't have a choice. They could attorney say, pay. Here's the item you pay. But they will say, okay, so what is title insurance? Earlier you mentioned it. But how much would that be, and how many different part of title insurance are there?
Well, there's different types of policies. There's 2 policies basically. There's a fee policy and a loan policy.
Right.
And the buyer is responsible for paying for both of them.
Is
Even
it
though
negotiable?
the loan policy, the fees are not negotiable. They're set by rates mandated by the New York State Department of Insurance. They tell us what we're allowed to charge, and that's what we charge.
Okay, so it's the fee, you mean the price of the title insurance doesn't vary because of different title companies?
Doesn't vary because of different title companies.
Okay.
Fixed rate, New York State Department of Insurance tells us what we're allowed to charge.
Right.
There's a difference in pricing only because of the property value. So if you're buying $1 million property, your title insurance is much less than if you're buying a $10 million property.
Right.
And if you're buying a $10 million property, call us up right away, please.
So is it based on the percentage?
It's based on a fee schedule.
The fee schedule.
And it's a sliding schedule. As you go up, the rate drops down.
Okay. So explain what a title insurance, what's included in it. Is it the owner insurance, the lender insurance, and
so the lender insurance covers the mortgage policy and the lender for the same thing that the fee policy covers the homeowner. All right, and the homeowner basically is covered. Again, we'll go back to the first part, but it guarantees that you own the property. It doesn't guarantee that if a tree falls on your house, you'll get insurance and the insurance will pay for the damage. We're not property and casualty insurance, but it's also, because we're an entirely different animal. Property and casualty or other types of insurance, you pay for it once a year.
Right.
Your title insurance, you pay for once in the life of ownership, and it's transferable to your next of kin. So you want to transfer it to your son, your daughter, a brother, you can do these things.
It transfers.
unlike other policies.
Right.
So that makes it an entirely different animal, once in a lifetime of ownership.
And so who writes the title insurance?
The underwriters write it, the agents write it, underwriters give us authorizations. So for instance, Stewart Title Insurance authorizes us to write a policy. We can write a policy up to $3 million in-house.
So insurance company underwrites, okay.
They're the underwriters, and we issue a piece of paper that says Stewart right on it, and that's a bona fide insurance contract. Over $3 million, we get approval from the underwriter to do it.
So let me to give you a scenario. So if today I buy the $3 million, the condo, and you are the title company that who prepare title search and the title report and write a title insurance for me. Then a month later, somebody we realize, hey, the owner did not pay the property tax, right? The seller, but it's already closed. So what can happen? What happened? Then what should the buyer do?
Well, we've never, first I want to go on record, we've never had an adverse claim in over 15 years of business, and we don't plan to. We do a thorough job, and we protect our buyers.
Right.
But we've had cases where people have approached me for advice on what to do. One of the things you need to do is first, when you get that fee policy, hang on to it. Put it somewhere just as safe as any other document.
Can it be scanned to be a PDF file?
It can be electronic, that's fine. But you want to have some record of, who insured you, how much you were insured for, and what the protocol is for it. And it says right in there, you just open up the policy and it says in there what to do.
Right.
But if you don't know, give me a call. I'll tell you who the underwriter is, and we'll find out what is the issue. Perhaps the issue is unpaid taxes that were somehow missed.
Right.
You look at, we look at to see what happened at the closing. Did you get the money for it? Was it a negotiated item? And if not, if simply, hey, you paid, the seller should have paid, the seller's now gone. They moved to China or whatever.
So what can happen?
So then you have an insurance claim against the title underwriter and the title company.
And they will take care of it. Just like regular property issue, we go to the homeowner insurance company to make a claim.
Well, this is a good point too, because people always ask me, they say, Bill, let's just insure it and get it done, and if there's a claim later, we'll do it. Look, it's just like any other insurance policy. They're not going to say, oh, our bad, here's your check. They're going to look to fight it. They're going to look to find the seller. It could delay. There was a claim in New Jersey where an entire island of right near resort properties, right near the beach, but there was a dispute in ownership that went back hundreds of years where the municipality said they owned it, but the state said they didn't. Those properties were tied up over 2 years in court battles. Now, these are older people who bought them in very good values in the 50s and 60s. A lot of them died before they could even be sold because you couldn't sell it because there was something clouding the title. So what I like to tell my people is, look, we're doing this to make sure you're bulletproof. You still meet the policy, but we don't want you to have a claim. And because that claim is not going to be, here's your check. It's going to be a legal process. And that's not what we want to put anybody through.
Okay, so it sounds to me that the people who do the title search, this due diligence, are actually quite important. So the question would be, is there a qualification requirement on who can perform this process?
Yes, thank God now we have licensing. Years ago, anybody could do it, and everybody did do it. And there was a problem way back, and we had to big debacle, but now you have to be licensed. You have to maintain your continuing education requirements. We need to have only experts in our field. We want people who are knowledgeable and know how to protect our buyers, for all of us, for you, for me, for the attorneys. That's good for our industry. So there are qualifications, and I'm glad to have them.
I see. So, is it difficult to obtain this license?
I think now it is much more difficult than it used to be. Absolutely.
I see. And so you just mentioned that the price in the all the same among all the title insurance company, because the fee schedule is mandatory, is mandated by the
New York State Department.
New State Department. But how would the buyer know that who they should choose, or just really simply based on the attorney's recommendations and the broker's recommendation? Is there any clue that they will be able to get clear, clues that the difference between the title companies?
It's very difficult to discern a difference. Usually, to be candid, the attorneys steer the whole process. But like I said before, that's changing a great deal.
Right.
I get several calls a week now from people saying, I'm looking to buy,
Yeah.
and they give me their role, this is the scenario, and they ask me some questions like, hey, how long have you been doing business?
Yeah.
Why should I use you? And I
Right.
say, look, the bottom line is, you want somebody who cares. You want somebody who cares about the client, not closing. Closing is important. We make money that way, but if we close deals that we shouldn't and we continue to do that, ultimately that's going to be bad for our business long term.
Right.
I've been doing this since 2001. I want to continue to do this for a long
16
time.
years.
I want to make sure I can sleep at night and that my clients can sleep at night peacefully.
Yeah. So basically, it's really good. I think it's good progress now that we see, more and more buyers, even brokers, we start to explore, to start to understand that who are the ones who perform the title search. This important part of due diligence versus that before we never really, get involved. It's really in the hand of the buyer attorneys. And from my own cases happened last year, I realized, it's actually quite important. And now here, with Bill, it's important for us to understand as well. Is there other information that you can tell us that I didn't ask, or interesting story?
I have a lot of interesting stories. All right, so the boundary line dispute leads to another area where basically, let me think. I'm trying to think of a good one. It's important to have people
Let me ask you,
care.
what would be the most challenging part as a title company? When you perform the title search, what would be something that challenge that make you feel this is difficult to perform this due diligence?
The biggest problem we have now are prior title clearances where the title agencies are now out of business, and where the records and the public records aren't adequate, so we can't tell who the underwriter is. And typically these are older, they happened a while back.
Right.
And also you find out that the seller doesn't know where their insurance policy is. Those are the biggest ones where we have, maybe there was a death in line before they got their deed. So we say, okay, we want proof of death, proof of ownership, proof of death, proof of heirship. One of the ways we can avoid that is just get a fee policy.
Right.
Where we can't locate them, and then we're trying to go back one or two owners to see whether or not they have properly disposed of the property. Those become very difficult, very time consuming. And the other one that's really hurting us, not hurting us these days, is also what we call ancient mortgages. A lot of these cases have mortgages where they paid the mortgage. There's nothing wrong there. But the satisfaction of mortgage was never recorded. In the old days, the banks used to send a satisfaction of mortgage to the party that just sold the property. So it would go back to the new owner now, who says, I don't know what to do with this, and they'd file it. 20 years later, it's gone, and there's no satisfaction. So we actually take the extra step of trying to go through the history of the banks, and a lot of banks went out of business, don't forget, to find who the new bank is who's taken over the ownership of their assets to get a replacement or a duplicate original satisfaction of mortgage to clear those so that when our buyers go to sell 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, they won't have the same level of headaches, because as these things get older, they become harder and harder to verify and clear, as we say. So
we talk about a real property, the land. When people buy the land, do they need it as well?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Anything they sell to you, how do they get ownership of it? Do they really have the right to sell you land?
Yeah.
And land we try to be doubly careful of, because if it's land in our area that's been undeveloped since forever.
For a long time.
It's a little unusual. Everything's being developed here. There's very little open space available, so you have to look at it. Maybe there were some issues. Maybe they didn't pay their taxes. You'll be surprised. Unimproved land, how many times we find unpaid taxes. It's amazing. They never pay the utilities or their tax bill. There's no water bill, obviously, but they don't pay their taxes, because what are they going to do? Take the land away? No. So.
Right. Wow. Okay. Then I don't know what is any. I mean, I just feel I'm trying to digest all this information, and I know that next time I'm going to request the title report from the.
They make interesting reading. You should look at it.
Yeah, it is, because we always read, the appraisal report. A buyer care about the property value, whether he's paying the fair market value or whether he's being taken advantage of. So they request appraisal report. But now we can, the title report is the interesting part. Normally, how how thick a title report could be?
Our report's a little bit thicker because we're very thorough. So I would say a normal title report's going to be towards 50 pages.
50 pages?
40 to 50 pages. A lot of it's unnecessary to read. It's just standard caveats we put in there, sort of to cover our behinds.
What the contents normally include a title report?
It'll tell you, if there's a tax lien, covenants and restrictions. There's an easy one. So let's just say there's a telephone pole easement or right-of-way easement on the property. We'll tell you. We'll tell you ahead of time.
Right.
All right. So then also we can determine whether or not you want to order a survey.
Right.
And a lot of people with these row houses in Brooklyn where they've been attached and nothing's moved for 150 years, they don't want to order a survey. There's no need for it, and sometimes they're expensive.
Right.
But if you have an easement on your property, if there's certain restrictions, we see restrictions on the availability, on the ability to the availability to convey your title, there'll be restrictions. So you have to look at those too, particularly where it was a distressed neighborhood and the city or the state gave incentives to these people to own, develop. They'll put restrictions on what they can do on the deeds, and you have to look at those carefully.
So the title search and title insurance is now all the questions started popping in my head the last minute. The title insurance is the price is mandated by the states and it's not negotiable. But the title search, because we just talked about the houses, then what you need to do. So this is occur. If I'm buying a condo in Manhattan, I would assume that because how regulated every step, how professional we've done everything, probably easier for the title search in the due diligence. Everything's more clear, more organized. But if a buyer is buying somewhere out, a vacant land or empty houses, but given the price, it may only cost that $500,000, to buy the 3-story, building townhouse somewhere out in Brooklyn versus you have $3 million, you pay more on the title insurance. So the question is that since that part, the vacant houses and land that has not been used for a long time, might cost more effort of title company to do due diligence search versus the Manhattan condo. Is a difference on the pricing on title search, and how do you charge?
The title search is the same price on almost any property.
Already?
We have a property right now, somebody's buying it for the city.
Regardless how much effort difference you need to put in?
On rare occasions, if there's something unusually difficult about it, let's say we had one on the Brooklyn development, Brooklyn Navy Yards. A lot of times that comes, with the title report the title abstract will be 300 pages. So we call those difficult searches, and we will tack on a fee for those. But we have a property right now, it's $23,000 open vacant land being sold by the city of Yonkers. It's not going to make a lot of money on the title insurance on it, but the search is the same on it.
Search is the same. Is it the same?
You don't have any water charges. That's the
so among all different companies, or every company has their own charging schedule?
I would think every company's right about in the same line.
About the same line.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not.
We try to we want to make sure we're competitive on that side too. We can't charge more than everybody else and expect to get their business.
But it's not like mandated by the state say how much you can charge by the title search.
I don't know.
No, right, exactly. So it's really a private, decision.
So we call those departmental searches. So the departmental searches typically cost anywhere from $350 to $450 on most properties.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah. It's a very small part of the entire process.
Okay. So, so can you give us an example, just an overall sense that the title insurance, title search together, for somebody want to buy, under. Because you based on a schedule, right? Listed under $1.5 million, roughly the percentage of the title search and insurance together, percentage of price. So
are we talking transfer taxes and too? Because don't forget you have mansion tax on that also.
No, just based on the title.
So I think you're probably looking somewhere around $7,000 on that one. $7,000.
The percentage,
I don't know the percentage, but that's ballpark about a $1.5 million deal coming in somewhere around there.
So it's important that now we know it's important to do a title search. I mean, everybody's done a title search, but the difference is that before we didn't really exactly know why it's so important, and now it's important to know that it's importance.
It's extremely important.
It's extremely important.
I've had people come ask me questions, and out of the blue, just these phone calls. Just listen, I tell them, they say, should I buy title insurance? I said, look, even if you don't use our title company, if you're buying a condo, if you're buying a residential property, if you're buying a commercial property, buy the title insurance.
Okay.
I would tell that to anybody.
Wow. Okay. So as usual, can our buyer do seller need to have this question? Can our buyer call you or your staff, your office to ask any question about the titles?
Always.
Yeah, because it's really that most people don't really know much about the title part, and now we just through this session and more, interaction with the more title company, reputable, especially like the bills company, and we want to through a conversation to, educate the buyer that why it's important. So we also rely on the company, the bills company, the professional, the bill to give it education. So we will, as usual, we will post bills company information and the business card on the session, and then feel free to contact Bill's office.
Please.
Would our buyer get some more discount?
It's all regulated. It's regulated. Remember that. There's no discounts.
It's all regulated. However, you definitely get a quality search, quality services for sure. Because I know how Bill, how Bill is. Yeah, absolutely. So happy Friday. Oh, by that way, through today's our Friday newsletter, we just shared exciting news that we are moving soon to.
That's right.
We're moving to Times Square location. Now we're in Soho. Bill is our neighbor in Soho as well, but we'll be Times Square, more central for our agent, for our client, and more really crazy energy. So we'll be empowered. So we share with you more. So have a wonderful weekend. Happy Friday, and thank you for staying with us.
Thanks, everyone. Nice being here.